At his mother's 70th birthday party, she announced she was giving the entire family business to my brother-in-law. My husband, Tom, applauded in agreement. After the party, he handed me 2 plane tickets. "Mom, we're moving to Asheville. Please take care of yourself." The sky was just beginning to lighten, a pale, hazy gray. Mist still clung to the branches of the old oak trees in the front yard. I was already awake. The distant hum of a street sweeper making its rounds on the asphalt was the only sound in the quiet morning. Today was a momentous day for our family. The grand celebration for my mother-in-law's 70th birthday. As the wife of the eldest son, I understood the weight of my responsibilities. For the past 3 days, I have been running myself ragged. From booking the most prestigious restaurant in town for the catering, to hiring a live jazz trio, to inviting relatives from across the country and all of the family's business contacts. My husband, Tom, had been just as busy. He stayed up late and woke up early, checking every detail of the party favors and ensuring every tablecloth was perfectly pressed. Yet, amidst the flurry of preparation, I couldn't shake a cold dread that ran down my spine whenever I thought of his mother, Helen. "Tom, have you double-checked the guest list? I don't see Mr. Henderson's name from the business council. What kind of shoddy work is this?" Helen's voice cut through the air from the living room, sharp and metallic like clashing steel. I quickly put down a stack of invoices and hurried in. "Mom, I hand-delivered the invitation to Mr. Henderson last week. I also called him this morning to confirm, and he said he'd be on time." My mother-in-law sat on an antique mahogany settee, her fingers fiddling with a string of pearl beads. She didn't look at me, her gaze fixed on the yard outside, where Kevin, my husband's youngest brother, was lounging on a patio chair, engrossed in a game on his phone. He completely ignored the team of workers, struggling to set up the event tent. "Kevin told me Mr. Henderson changed his number recently. You're the older brother, yet you never bother to keep your information updated for him. If you keep insisting on doing things your way, you'll ruin everything one day." She added that final jab before standing up and walking straight over to Kevin. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room. Sarah, my wife, came out from the kitchen and gently touched my arm. Her eyes were filled with a sad but comforting understanding. I forced a smile, a strained one, to reassure her. 15 years of marriage, 15 years I had shouldered this business since my father passed away. And still, Helen was the same. In her eyes, I was just a machine, a competent worker who lacked tact. Kevin, on the other hand, the youngest son who had given her a grandson to carry on the family name, was her precious jewel. By 9 a.m., guests began to arrive in droves. Our old but stately suburban home was now a vibrant display of flowers and decorations. The sound of laughter and congratulations filled the air, echoing through the neighborhood. I stood at the entrance in a well-tailored suit, greeting guests. Everyone who came by complimented Helen, saying how fortunate she was to have such a capable and industrious eldest son who had single-handedly rebuilt the family empire. At those moments, I could only nod humbly and say thank you. But I knew that when my mother, standing nearby, heard those words, her lips would purse in a subtle, displeased line. While I was sweating, juggling greeting guests and managing the catering staff, Kevin made his grand entrance in a flashy designer suit. He sauntered between the tables, a glass of expensive scotch in hand, charming all the uncles and aunts with his smooth talk. My mother watched him with an unusually affectionate gaze. She took him with her everywhere she went, introducing him as the future pillar of this family. "Tom, what are you doing just standing there? Go check on table 5, they're out of ice. Can't you handle one simple task without a guest having to wait?" My mother's voice boomed across the patio, just as I was in the middle of a crucial discussion with a major client about next year's lumber supply contract. The client looked at me with pity, my face flushed with embarrassment. I bowed my head, apologized, and hurried off to resolve the issue. The feeling of being publicly humiliated was a bitter pill, but I was used to it. From childhood, I was always the one who had to give in. If Kevin wanted a toy, I gave it to him. If Kevin made a mistake, I took the blame so he wouldn't be punished by our father. Now, with streaks of gray in my hair, my mother still treated me like an incompetent child, or more accurately, an unpaid employee. The party reached its peak. Platters of gourmet food were served, and the jazz trio played a cheerful, happy birthday. I saw Sarah standing just out of sight, holding our daughter, Lily. Lily looked beautiful today in her pink dress, her wide eyes watching her grandmother and the other relatives. I was about to walk over and hold her when my mother called out to Kevin. "Kevin, darling, bring my little Leo over to Grandma." Leo, Kevin and Jessica's son, was spoiled rotten by my mother. She picked him up, smothering him with kisses, then turned to the guests. "Here he is, the future of our family. This little boy will one day follow in his father's and grandfather's footsteps and bring great honor to our name." Seeing her grandmother holding her cousin, Lily toddled over, her voice a tiny whisper. "Grandma, happy birthday, Grandma." My mother didn't even glance at her. She waved a dismissive hand. "Lily, go play with your mother somewhere else. Grandma is busy with the baby. Don't be a nuisance." My daughter froze, her little lip trembling. She turned, on the verge of tears, and clung to Sarah's leg. From a distance, I watched, my heart clenching. A quiet rage began to smolder within me, but I forced myself to remain calm. I glanced towards the study, where a framed photo of my grandfather was discreetly placed. He was the only one who ever understood me. He was the one who taught me that the heaviest ears of corn bow the lowest. But bowing your head doesn't mean you're a coward, it means you're waiting for the harvest. Today, I would bow my head one last time, for the sake of filial duty. But I knew that after this party, nothing would ever be the same. The party wound down, and the guests thinned out. The house was left with only close family and a few cleaning staff tidying up the aftermath of the grand celebration. The cloying smell of stale wine, mixed with leftover food, created a suffocating atmosphere. My mother sat in the main armchair, her face still glowing from the day's flattery. Kevin and Jessica sat on either side of her, looking incredibly smug. I had just seen the last guest out and was about to go rest when I heard my mother call. Sarah, Lily, and I walked into the living room. "Everyone, listen up. Today is a happy day for me, and I want to make it perfectly complete." My mother began, her voice more formal than usual. She pulled little Leo onto her lap, feeding him a piece of cake before glancing over at my wife and me. In that glance, I saw coldness and something that looked like calculation. In this family, we have always valued tradition and lineage above all else. Kevin may be a bit playful, but he has the great fortune of giving this family a son. That is a contribution beyond measure. Her hand stroked Leo's head as she spoke. Sarah, standing next to me, tightened her grip on the hem of her dress. I knew she was hurting. We had been married for 10 years and only had Lily. Sarah had been pregnant a second time, but due to overworking herself for the family company, she had a miscarriage. Since then, doctors said it would be difficult for her to conceive again. My mother, far from being sympathetic, had used it as a weapon to criticize Sarah for years. "Now, Mom, Sarah has worked hard too," Kevin chimed in. But his tone was more mocking than defensive. "But a daughter eventually marries and belongs to another family. Only a son stays to care for his parents in their old age and carry on the legacy." His wife, Jessica, added her 2 cents. "That's right, Helen. Like us, no matter how hard it is, we knew we had to have a boy to make you happy. Unlike some people who just bury themselves in business, leaving the house cold and empty without the sound of a grandson." Lily was holding a small doll. She seemed to sense the tense atmosphere and huddled closer to her mother. Leo saw the pretty doll and ran over to snatch it. "That's for Leo. Leo wants it," he screamed. Lily held on tight. "It's mine, Leo. Daddy just bought it for me." My mother immediately snapped. "Lily, you're the older cousin. Why are you so selfish? You're fighting with him over a doll? Give it to him, now." But Grandma." Lily started to sob. I said, "Give it to him, or go to your room. Don't you dare stay here and cause trouble." My mother shot up, snatched the doll from Lily's hands, and gave it to Leo. The boy grinned triumphantly, while my daughter burst into tears. Sarah quickly picked her up, her own tears welling. She said nothing, just bowed her head to my mother, and silently carried our daughter upstairs. I stood there, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to scream, to ask my mother how she could be so cruel to her own granddaughter. But looking into her eyes, all I saw was an extreme, unyielding prejudice. "Tom, don't you give me that look," my mother said coldly. "I'm teaching her to share and to know her place. She's a girl. She needs to learn these things for when she gets married. Leo is the heir. He deserves to be prioritized." I sighed, my voice low. "Mom, it's not about the doll. I just wish you could be a little fairer. Lily is your grandchild too. She needs your love. Fair?" My mother let out a dry laugh. I am the fairest person in this house. Whoever contributes the most gets the biggest reward. You're capable, you make money, but you failed to give me a grandson to carry on the family name. That is the greatest disrespect of all. I fell silent. So, all my efforts over the past 15 years, the sleepless nights over blueprints, the long business trips deep into lumber country to source the best wood, the times I had to drink until I was sick to close a deal, all of it was worthless, simply because I couldn't have a son. Kevin sat there, casually propping his feet up on the coffee table, his eyes half closed in a look of pure satisfaction. He knew that in this battle for favor, he had won without lifting a finger. He held the ultimate trump card as son, and he knew exactly how to exploit our mother's bias. I turned and walked out onto the porch. The night air had a chill to it. I looked up at the sky, at the twinkling stars. I remembered my grandfather. When he was alive, he used to take me out to the garden to pick apples. He'd say, "Tommy, my boy, people are like trees. Some trees have beautiful blossoms but bear no fruit. Others grow quietly in the shade, but their fruit is the sweetest. Just live with a clear conscience, and the universe will take care of the rest." I didn't fully understand his words back then, but now, standing in the very house I had poured my soul into preserving, I felt like a stranger being pushed to the curb by the people I loved most. I took out my phone and called an old friend in Asheville. "Hey, David, how's that search for the plot of land with the workshop going?" "Yeah, get it ready for me. I think the time is coming." I hung up, my heart heavy but also tinged with a strange sense of relief. A plan I had been quietly preparing for a long time was now ready to be set in motion. My mother wanted to give Kevin everything. Fine, I would let her have her wish. But what that everything truly consisted of, perhaps only my late grandfather and I really knew. The next morning, the tension in the house hadn't dissipated. After a sparse breakfast, my mother gathered everyone in the living room for an important announcement. I knew this moment would come, but I hadn't expected it to be so swift and public. Relatives from both sides of the family were present. My mother must have given them a heads up to come and bear witness. The familiar faces of uncles and aunts I had always respected now looked at me with either pity or curiosity. My mother sat in the highest seat, a wooden box containing the family's important documents beside her. She cleared her throat, and the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, I ask you to witness this," she began, her voice loud and clear. "I am old, and my health is not what it used to be. This business, this legacy, was left by my late husband and our ancestors. It is my duty to entrust it to someone worthy of preserving our heritage." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the room before landing on Kevin. He had changed into a more formal outfit and looked quite distinguished, though his usual lazy demeanor was still palpable. "Tom, as the eldest son, has worked hard for the company over the years. I acknowledge his contributions." My mother's voice suddenly turned sharp. "But he only knows money and work. He has forgotten his roots. This family needs an heir, someone to protect this home and honor our ancestors. Kevin has fulfilled that duty. He gave us Leo, and that is the greatest blessing for this family." I stood in a corner of the room, arms crossed, observing silently. Sarah stood next to me, and I could feel her shoulders trembling slightly. "Therefore, today, in front of everyone, I declare that this house, all the ancestral land, and the controlling interest in Springfield Heritage Woods will be handed over to Kevin to manage." Her declaration was resolute. A murmur went through the room. "What? Everything to the youngest? Kevin doesn't know the first thing about the lumber business, but he has a son. Helen values that above all. Poor Tom, all those years of hard work for nothing." My mother slammed her hand on the table. "Silence. I'm not finished. Tom, I will give you a portion of my personal savings, so you and your wife can start your own life. But this house and this company now belong to your brother. You have 1 month to guide him and hand over everything." Kevin and Jessica exchanged a look of unconcealed triumph. Jessica quickly stood up. "Oh, Mother, you are so wise. We promise we won't disappoint you. I will take the best care of you, and Leo will one day be the true master of this house." I looked at my mother, then at Kevin. He was staring at me with a challenging glint in his eyes, as if to say, "See, no matter how good you are, in the end, you're just working for me." All eyes turned to me, expecting an outburst, a fierce protest, or at the very least, a plea for mercy. But there was none. I took a deep breath. feeling a 1,000-pound weight that had been on my shoulders for years suddenly vanish. I stepped forward into the center of the living room. My mother watched me with a scrutinizing gaze. Do you have anything to say? Don't tell me I'm being unfair. I'm doing this for the future of our family. I looked directly into her eyes, a faint smile appearing on my lips. I started to clap. The applause was slow, but echoed loudly in the silent room. Congratulations, Mom. Congratulations, Kevin, I said, my voice surprisingly clear and calm. I fully support your decision. Everyone was stunned. My mother narrowed her eyes, clearly taken aback by my reaction. Are you serious? You don't blame me? Not at all, I continued, my voice sincere. For years, I've carried the weight of the company, and honestly, I'm tired. Now that Kevin has matured and has a son to carry on the legacy, it's only right that he takes over. I thank you, Mom, for giving me the chance to rest and spend time with my wife and daughter. I turned to Kevin and clapped him on the shoulder. It's all yours now, little brother. Work hard and don't tarnish the family name. If you need help, you can ask, but with your talent, I doubt you'll need me. Kevin was momentarily speechless, then chuckled awkwardly. Come on, big brother, you're making me blush. I'll do my best. You just go enjoy your retirement. Sarah looked at me, her expression shifting from surprise to complete understanding. She knew what I was thinking. The relatives began to whisper among themselves. That Tom is too nice for his own good. He just lost everything, and he's clapping. He must have snapped, but they had no idea. In the inner pocket of my jacket was the key to a safe deposit box at the bank, where documents personally entrusted to me by my grandfather before he died were stored. He had seen through my mother's favoritism and Kevin's frivolous nature years ago. Tommy, my grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. Real gold isn't afraid of the fire, but gold in a fool's pocket is just scrap metal. Hold on to your skills, son, not an empty title. Seeing my easy compliance, my mother seemed a bit let down. She had prepared for a fight, and my surrender left her feeling suspicious. Good. It's good that you're being reasonable, she said, a hint of confusion in her voice. Then, starting tomorrow, you will begin transferring the books to Kevin. You will introduce him to all the clients and take him to the lumber yards. Yes, Mom. I will do exactly as you wish, I said with a slight bow. I led Sarah and Lily upstairs. My steps felt light for the first time in years. I knew that from this moment on, I owed this family nothing. I had fulfilled my duty as the eldest son. I had yielded to the very end. Now, my life was my own to live. Sarah, I whispered to my wife once we were in our room, start packing, only the essentials. We're leaving. Sarah looked at me and smiled, tears of happiness rolling down her cheeks. I've been waiting to hear you say that for a very long time. We looked out the window, towards the south, towards the misty mountains that awaited us. A new life, one of peace and freedom, was opening up before us. And downstairs, my mother and Kevin were still reveling in the fortune they had just acquired, oblivious to the fact that everything of real value was about to walk out the door with me. After my applause, a chilling silence fell over the grand living room. The uncles and aunts, who usually loved to gossip about the inheritance, now just stared at each other in bewilderment. They had braced themselves for a thunderstorm, a fiery argument between the brothers, or at the very least, the bitter tears of my wife and me. But my calm acceptance had upended their expectations. I felt a strange breeze blow through my heart. It wasn't the cold wind of loss, but the refreshing gust of freedom. For 15 years, every morning I woke up, my shoulders felt weighed down by thousands of tons of lumber, hundreds of invoices, and the crushing pressure to please my mother. Now, with a single nod, I had cast it all off. Tom, are you being serious? My mother broke the silence, her question laced with suspicion. She squinted her eyes, which were beginning to cloud with age, trying to find a trace of resentment or cunning on my face. You don't regret this? You're not going to use this act of compliance to go around telling everyone how unfair your mother was, are you? I smiled. A smile I believe was the most genuine one I'd had in a decade. Mom, I'm telling you the truth, from the bottom of my heart. I'm happy for you, because you've found someone you trust to carry on the family business. And I'm happy for Kevin, because he has a chance to prove himself. All I hope for is that our family remains peaceful. That's all I want. Kevin, having regained his confidence, stood up and adjusted the collar of his designer shirt. He declared to the relatives, you see, my big brother is a class act. He's reasonable. That's why he's doing this. I promise you, Mom, and I promise you, Tom, I will take Springfield Heritage Woods to new heights. You just go and rest easy. I'll handle all the hard work from now on. Jessica, Kevin's wife, didn't miss her cue. She scurried over to my mother and began massaging her shoulders. See, Mom? I told you. Tom and Sarah are the most understanding people in the family. From tomorrow, they can take their time finding a nice little farm somewhere to retire. We'll take care of everything here. I looked at Sarah, and she gave a slight nod. We quietly withdrew from the crowd that was now swarming around Kevin, congratulating the new CEO. As I walked up the solid oak staircase, the very staircase I had handpicked the wood for 10 years ago, my steps felt unusually light. That night, I sat alone in my home office, surrounded by design blueprints and samples of rare woods I had painstakingly collected. From a secret drawer, I pulled out a small, framed photo of my grandfather. He looked at me with his kind eyes, as if he had known this day would come. Everyone in the house, including my mother, thought the strength of Springfield Heritage Woods lay in its name, its warehouses, and the capital my mother controlled. But they were wrong. 15 years in the trenches of the business world had taught me one thing. In the lumber industry, integrity and expertise are the roots of the tree. And those things I had never allowed to belong to the company. They belonged to me, personally to Tom the lumberman. The major clients from Japan and Europe, they signed contracts with me because they trusted my eye for wood. They knew I would never pass off cheap particle board as solid timber. The most skilled craftsmen at the mills, they stayed because of the kindness I had shown their families in times of hardship. When I left, all of that would leave with me. My applause today wasn't an act of surrender. It was a farewell to a past filled with shackles. I took out my phone and sent a short text to my largest client. It's done. The plan is in motion. Outside, the clatter of dishes being cleared away still echoed from downstairs. Kevin and Jessica were popping champagne with my mother to celebrate. They were celebrating their acquisition of a castle made of sand, oblivious to the fact that the tide was already rising. I turned off the light and lay down next to Sarah. She turned and wrapped her arms around me. "Are you tired?" she whispered. "No," I said. "I feel like I've just set down a 1,000-pound boulder." "Go to sleep, honey. We have a lot to do tomorrow." I closed my eyes, and an image of a small farm in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina appeared in my mind, a place with vibrant rose gardens and the sound of Lily's joyful laughter. That was the true inheritance I wanted to protect. Not even 24 hours after the announcement, Kevin and Jessica's true colors began to show in the most brazen way. Early the next morning, as I was savoring a cup of black coffee on the porch, enjoying my last few moments of peace, Kevin appeared with a confrontational look on his face. The sweet big brother, little brother act from the night before was gone, replaced by an arrogant, superior attitude. He threw a stack of papers onto the table in front of me. "Tom, this is the list of the company's fixed assets. Mom told me to inventory everything. I see the F-150 you're driving is registered to the company. Starting tomorrow, leave the keys with me. I need it for business." I calmly took a sip of coffee. "Fine. The truck belongs to the company. I'll hand it over tomorrow." Seeing no resistance, Kevin grew bolder. He paced around the living room, pointing at various items. "This antique settee, too. Mom said it was bought with company funds. Now that I'm in charge of the house, it stays. When you two move out, don't even think about taking anything that's not yours." Jessica emerged from her room, holding a vintage ceramic vase I had bought for my mother last year. She inspected it, then sneered. "Looks nice, but who knows if it's real? Tom, you've been in business for years. You must have a nice little nest egg stashed away. The savings Mom is giving you is more than generous. Don't you dare get greedy with us." I looked at Jessica, then at Kevin, and felt a pang of sorrow for my mother. She thought she was preserving her legacy by handing it to Kevin, but she couldn't see their bottomless greed and short-sightedness. They only cared about what was in front of them, oblivious to the fact that what had sustained this family for years was my sweat and tears. "Kevin," I said calmly, "everything in this house, from the nails in the walls to the pillars on the porch, if you want it, you can have it. We will only take our personal belongings. You don't need to be so defensive." Kevin scoffed. "You talk a good game, but I know you've got all the company's client contacts in your head. Don't try to pull a fast one and steer them somewhere else. If I see revenue drop, I'll tell Mom you're sabotaging your own brother." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Kevin was truly a child in the business world. Did he think clients were sheep that would follow whoever held the shepherd's crook? Just do your job well, Kevin. Clients are smart. They only work with people who bring them value. That afternoon, things escalated. As Sarah was packing our clothes into suitcases, Jessica barged into our room without knocking. She went straight to Sarah's vanity and picked up her small jewelry box. Sarah, this necklace. Isn't this the one Mom gave you for your 10th anniversary? I think you should return it to her. After all, you didn't manage to give this family a son. It's probably not appropriate for you to keep an heirloom. Sarah was stunned, her face pale with humiliation. She was about to speak when I stepped in and gently took the box from Jessica's hand. Jessica, what Mom gives to Sarah is hers. You have no right to decide. If Mom wants it back, she will ask us herself. Now, please leave so my wife can pack. Jessica stomped out of the room, not forgetting to hurl one last venomous remark. We'll see how long your high and mighty attitude lasts. Let's see if you're still clapping when you walk out of here with nothing but the clothes on your back. I closed the door and wrapped my arms around Sarah's trembling shoulders. Don't be sad. The more they act like this, the more certain I am that leaving is the right decision. Every extra day we spend here is another scar on our souls. That evening, Kevin threw another small party, inviting his gambling and drinking buddies over to celebrate his new position as CEO. The sound of shouting and clinking glasses echoed through the house all night. My mother sat in the adjacent room. Perhaps she was beginning to feel that this kind of boisterousness was unsettling, but she tried to convince herself it was just youthful energy. Kevin had no idea that while he was basking in his friend's flattery, I had already signed my resignation letter and prepared a handover file containing nothing but an empty shell for him. A company with no skilled craftsmen, no loyal partners, and a warehouse full of unsellable back orders. That was the inheritance Kevin's greed had blindly accepted. I looked at Lily, sleeping soundly, her tiny hand clutching the hem of her mother's shirt. Tomorrow, my child, you will no longer have to live in fear in this house. Tomorrow, Daddy will take you to a place where you can be yourself, where you will be loved and cherished. The last night in our old house was thick with the smell of cigarette smoke and the noise from Kevin's party, which still hadn't ended. I sat by the window, looking down at the garden where the plants my father had personally planted were now littered with cigarette butts and spilled drinks by Kevin's friends. My heart ached, not for the material loss, but for the disrespect shown to the work of a man who was no longer with us. Sarah came and placed a hand on my shoulder. Under the dim glow of the bedside lamp, I could see her eyes were red. Sarah was the most patient woman I had ever known. In 10 years of marriage, she had never once talked back to my mother, no matter how harsh Helen's words were. She had dedicated her youth to this family, taking care of my every need so I could focus on the business. Are we really leaving, Tom? Sarah asked, her voice as soft as a whisper. I turned and took her slender hand in mine. Yes, we're leaving. Do you have any regrets? Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't regret leaving the house or the wealth. I just hurt for you. All those years you worked so hard, the late nights, the freezing winters you spent at the lumber mill to meet deadlines. And in the end, they treat you like a stranger. I pulled Sarah into my arms, letting her rest her head on my chest. I could feel her pain, a deep and lingering ache. Sarah, I don't see it as a loss. I see it as the price we pay for peace for you and Lily. If I stayed, if I kept propping up that company, we would eventually collapse under the weight of it all. You see it, don't you? Mom only sees her grandson, and Kevin only sees the CEO's chair. They don't need us. They only need what we can produce for them. Sarah sobbed. I remember when I lost our second baby. I had just come home from the hospital. Mom didn't say a single word of comfort. She just scolded me for not being able to secure the lineage. You were away on a business trip, and I didn't dare tell you because I didn't want you to worry. I lay alone in this room, listening to Kevin and Jessica laughing outside, and my heart just shattered. I was horrified. This was the first time Sarah had ever spoken of this. At the time, I only knew she had miscarried due to overwork. I had assumed my mother was as heartbroken as we were. It turned out that behind my back, Sarah had endured such cruel emotional abuse. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice choked with pain. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you better. I held her tighter, my heart aching. It was my fault. I was so obsessed with work, thinking that if I made enough money to make Mom happy, she would learn to love you. I was so wrong. Sarah wiped her tears and looked at me, her eyes watery but resilient. No, you weren't wrong. You're the best man in the world. It's because you're too good that people felt they could treat you this way. I'm not crying out of sadness anymore. I'm crying because I'm happy. Happy that from now on, we get to live for ourselves. We sat there talking all night. I told Sarah about my grandfather's last wishes. He had been a legendary master craftsman in his time, the one who had taught me all the secrets of selecting and treating wood that no school could ever teach. Grandpa knew what my mother was like, I explained. She's sharp, but she's obsessed with status and the idea of an heir. He said the family business would one day fall into the hands of someone who didn't appreciate it. So he secretly left me assets that no one could ever take away. Those assets were patents for a revolutionary technique to treat rare woods without chemicals and a private trust fund he had set up for me in a Swiss bank. Sarah looked at me in amazement. Grandpa planned that far ahead? Yes. He loved me because he knew I was dutiful. He told me, Tommy, there will be storms in this family. When you feel you have no place left, leave. Don't cling to an empty shell. Hold on to the soul of your craft. The next morning, we woke up late. Kevin was still asleep after his late-night party. I went down to the kitchen and found my mother sitting alone at the table with a meager breakfast. She looked tired, her face more drawn than usual. Mom, I said softly. She looked up, her eyes avoiding mine. You're up? Is the handover complete? Yes. Here are the keys to the warehouse, the truck, and all the financial records. I've left detailed notes on all the urgent matters. As of today, I'm no longer an employee of Springfield Heritage Woods. Sarah, Lily, and I are leaving. My mother took the bundle of keys, her hand trembling slightly. Where? Where are you going? Are you really moving to the countryside? We're going away for a while. For a change of scenery for Lily. You stay here and take care of yourself, Mom. With Kevin to look after you, I can leave with peace of mind. I bowed my head one last time and turned to leave. I didn't dare look back, afraid I might see her belated tears, or worse, her cold, unyielding indifference. A taxi was waiting at the gate. Sarah and Lily were already inside. I took one last look at the stately home, at the Springfield Heritage Woods sign that was beginning to fade with time. I knew the real storm for this family was just beginning, and I had managed to get my loved ones to a safe harbor just before it hit. The taxi pulled away, leaving behind the drama, the schemes, and the pain. Asheville, the city of misty mountains and pine forests, was waiting for us with a new beginning. The interstate bus sped through the night, carrying my small family away from the noisy, scheming city. Lily was fast asleep in Sarah's arms, her small hand still clutching my finger as if afraid I'd disappear on another long trip. I looked at my wife. Her eyes were still red from crying. I gently squeezed her shoulder, inviting her to lean on me. Tom, Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse, when you told me about your grandfather, it still feels like a dream. He passed away 5 years ago. Why are you only telling me now? I sighed. The memory of my kind grandfather, with his white beard and warm smile, as clear as day. It wasn't that I wanted to hide it from you. It was his instruction. He said, as long as the family is at peace, just be a good son and a responsible brother. But when hearts change, when you have no other choice, then you open that box. He understood my mother better than anyone, Sarah. Back when my grandfather was on his deathbed, he had called me into his room alone. He left nothing to my mother or Kevin in his public will, which had made my mother resentful for a long time. But he gave me a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside was an old, yellowed notebook and a debit card for a Swiss bank account. Grandpa was a craftsman, but he was also a self-taught scientist. I explained to Sarah. That notebook contains all his techniques for extracting natural oils to treat wood for pests and to create color without using chemicals. Do you know how valuable that is? Today's high-end markets in Japan and Germany are extremely strict about health standards. Grandpa's techniques are what this entire industry is craving. Sarah stared at me, her eyes wide with astonishment. So, all this time, the big contracts you brought in. That's right, I nodded. I was secretly applying his techniques to the high-end orders. But I did it under my own name as the technical supervisor. Mom and Kevin just thought it was because of the old Springfield Heritage Woods brand. They had no idea that clients trusted the quality of the wood that I personally treated. I remembered the afternoon spent on the porch with my grandfather. He would always say, Tommy, the root of craftsmanship isn't rare wood. It's the heart of the craftsman. Rare wood in the hands of a greedy man is just a pile of firewood. But common wood in the hands of someone with heart can become a masterpiece. Your mother is too concerned with prestige, and Kevin is too shallow. You are the only one who can preserve the soul of this family. The bank card he gave me. I had initially intended never to touch it. I wanted to build the Springfield Heritage Woods legacy with my own two hands. But over the past 5 years, every time I secured a major profit, my mother would find a way to divert the funds to Kevin for his frivolous real estate ventures or to buy luxury cars and designer clothes. The savings she said she was giving me was, in fact, only a tiny fraction of what I had generated. Grandpa left me enough capital to start over anywhere we want, I whispered to my wife. That money, combined with the patents I secretly registered in both our names, is our safety net. It's something Kevin and Mom will never see coming. Sarah let out a long sigh and leaned her head on my shoulder. I don't need millions, Tom. I just need you and Lily to be safe and happy. But hearing you say that, I feel so much lighter. It turns out Grandpa was watching over you all along. I looked out the bus window as the city lights receded behind us. I thanked my grandfather, who had taught me the virtue of patience. For 15 years, I had repaid my debt of gratitude to my mother. I had fulfilled my duty as an older brother. Now, my grandfather's secret would be the foundation upon which I would build a true kingdom for my wife and daughter, a kingdom free of prejudice and scorn, filled only with the scent of wood and the warmth of love. Meanwhile, back in our hometown, Springfield Heritage Woods was beginning its first days under the reign of its new CEO, Kevin. Early that morning, in the office that still reeked of stale liquor and cigarettes from the previous night's party, Kevin sat smugly in my large leather chair, his feet propped up on the desk, a ridiculously expensive cigar in his mouth. Mr. Henderson? Yes, this is Kevin. I'm officially taking over Springfield Heritage Woods from my brother Tom. Yes, he's retired to the countryside. About that supply contract for the vintage oak. I'll have my team get right on it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then the voice of Mr. Henderson, a longtime titan of the industry, came through, tinged with doubt. Kevin, I've worked with Springfield Heritage Woods for 10 years because of Tom's integrity. Every single order I've placed had to have his personal signature of quality approval before I would accept it. Now that he's gone, I find it very difficult to continue. Kevin's face fell, but he forced a sweet tone. Oh, come on, Mr. Henderson. Tom was just an employee of my mother's. The company is still in the family. I promise you, I'll even give you a 5% discount. I don't need your 5%, Mr. Henderson said flatly. In this business, a small mistake can cost millions. Wood that isn't properly aged or treated is a disaster waiting to happen. I'm going to have to put the contract on hold to reevaluate. Goodbye, son. The dial tone buzzed in Kevin's ear. He furiously slammed the phone down. He didn't understand that in this industry, people don't buy wood from a company. They buy the expertise of the man who selects the wood. Businessmen, like Mr. Henderson and our Japanese partners, knew who Tom the lumberman was. They knew only Tom would trek through forests for weeks to find one perfect tree, and only Tom knew how to make the grain of the wood breathe without cracking. At the same time, at the old house, my mother was busy entertaining a delegation of Japanese clients. This was the strategic partner I had been courting for 3 years. They had come to sign a long-term contract to supply handcrafted furniture for a chain of 5-star hotels in Tokyo. My mother graciously served them tea. Gentlemen, please. This is my youngest son, the new CEO of our company. From now on, you will be dealing with him. The head of the delegation, Mr. Tanaka, looked Kevin up and down with a cold, appraising stare. He said nothing, simply opened his briefcase, pulled out an old contract, and pointed to a small clause at the bottom. This contract is valid only under the direct technical supervision of engineer Thomas Miller. Kevin began to sweat profusely. Ah, sir, Tom is my brother. He's away for a while. I can take his place. Mr. Tanaka stood up and bowed politely, but his words were as sharp as a knife. Mrs. Miller, Mr. Kevin, we signed with Springfield Heritage Woods because we believed in the craftsmanship and integrity of Mr. Thomas Miller. Without him, your company is just another ordinary lumber yard. We must respectfully withdraw our offer to partner at this time, until we can speak with Mr. Miller again. The delegation walked out, leaving my mother frozen in the living room and Kevin's face drained of all color. The reality they would never know was that all of Springfield Heritage Woods' largest contracts were, in fact, personal agreements with me. I had anticipated this. When working with partners, I was always direct. If I am here, the wood will meet the standard. If I leave, Springfield Heritage Woods is no longer the same. They trusted me so much they were willing to put it in writing. My mother began to feel a tremor of fear. She looked at Kevin, the son she had always praised for having good fortune, now fumbling with a pile of paperwork he didn't understand. The bank loans, the pending orders, the fraying relationships, it was all a tidal wave beginning to crash down on their stately home. She sank into her chair, her trembling hand holding a now cold cup of tea. She suddenly remembered me, hustling in the lumber yard under the blistering 100-degree sun, or the times I'd been hospitalized for alcohol poisoning after schmoozing clients to bring home multi-million-dollar deals. At the time, she saw it merely as my duty as the eldest son. Now that I was gone, she was beginning to realize just how heavy that duty had been. "Kevin, call Tom. Call him right now," my mother ordered, her voice shaking. "Mom," I tried. "His phone is off. He's probably trying to run from his responsibilities," Kevin yelled, trying to mask his own terror. He had no idea I wasn't running from anything. I was simply taking back what was mine. Those contracts, that reputation, the name Tom the Lumberman, they had never belonged to Springfield Heritage Woods. They were the intangible assets I had built with my own blood, sweat, and tears over 15 years. After nearly 10 hours on the bus, the air began to change. The humid heat of the lowlands was replaced by a cool breeze carrying the faint, sweet scent of pine. Asheville appeared before us, shrouded in the ethereal morning mist. The city of rolling hills, old-world architecture, and the peace I had longed for. We got off at a small bus station. Lily rubbed her eyes, looked around, and squealed with delight. "Daddy, there are so many clouds. Does our new house live in the clouds?" I smiled and picked her up. "That's right, sweetie. Our new house is a place where the clouds come right up to the window." Sarah looked around. Despite her fatigue, her eyes sparkled with hope. "Where did you find a place? Is it far from the city center?" "We'll be just outside the city," I said. "A small plot of land with a garden in the mountains that I had David buy for me 2 years ago. It's quiet. There's enough land for you to plant your flowers, and I can build a small workshop for myself." We took a cab up into the mountains. The road wound through pine forests and past gardens bursting with colorful hydrangeas. My land was on a secluded hillside, overlooking a deep valley. A small, rustic but sturdy 2-room log cabin already stood there. Stepping inside, the smell of fresh pine and wild grass filled my lungs, and my spirit felt weightless. I set down our suitcases, threw open the windows, and looked out at the valley. A feeling of complete freedom washed over me. No more of my mother's scolding. No more of Kevin's snide remarks. No more business dinners that left me sick and detached from myself. "It's beautiful, Tom," Sarah whispered, standing beside me. "I can't believe we have a place like this." This was from my personal savings, from bonuses clients gave me directly. "It has nothing to do with the company's money," I explained. "I had originally planned to bring Mom and the whole family here for vacations, but I guess now, it's just for us." I started cleaning up. Lily ran around the yard, chasing yellow butterflies. Sarah quickly got a fire going in the hearth, and soon the smell of wood smoke and fresh coffee filled the air. A new life had truly begun. In our first few weeks in Asheville, I didn't rush into business. I spent time with my wife, going to the local nursery to buy rose and lavender seeds to plant around our home. I took my daughter for walks through the pine forests, teaching her to listen to the birds and identify different types of leaves. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay idle for long. Woodworking was in my blood. At night, when my wife and daughter were asleep, I would sit on the porch and study my grandfather's notebook. The formulas for natural wood treatment, the secrets of intricate carving. I wanted to apply them to products under my own brand. Tom's Timbers. Still awake? Sarah came out and draped a warm blanket over my shoulders. "I'm planning, honey," I said. "I want to open a flower farm combined with an artisan wood shop. Tourists who come here won't just see the flowers. They'll see how we turn rough logs into works of art with a soul." Sarah looked at me, her eyes full of trust. "I know you can do it. You're Tom the Lumberman. After all, wherever you are, miracles happen." I took her hand and looked towards the distant, sparkling lights of the city. I knew that back in our hometown, Kevin and my mother were probably scrambling to save the company. But I also knew that the price of greed and injustice would have to be paid, sooner or later. I wasn't resentful. I just felt sorry for them, for having lost the most precious things in a family, kinship and honesty. Tomorrow, I would start building my first workshop. Tomorrow, the flowers in our garden would begin to take root. And tomorrow, a new, brighter, and more peaceful chapter would officially be written for my family here in the breezy Highlands. The morning sun in Asheville was as sweet and gentle as honey, but I knew that back home, the atmosphere was likely as tense as a drawn bowstring. After a few days of settling my wife and daughter in, I decided to take the earliest bus back to my hometown, not out of nostalgia, but to perform one final ritual, to hand my mother my resignation letter in person. Stepping through the gates of Springfield Heritage Woods, I felt like a stranger. The towering stacks of lumber in the yard suddenly seemed crude and uninviting. The sound of saws still whirred, but it was sporadic, lacking the enthusiastic rhythm of the days when I was in charge. I went straight to my mother's office. She was sitting at her desk, her face clearly showing the fatigue of several days of failed client meetings. When she saw me, a flicker of hope lit up in her eyes, but it was quickly masked by her usual stern expression. "You're back? Where have you been with your phone off? Kevin is in a panic over that Japanese contract. You need to go and help him." Her voice was still a command. I gently placed a white envelope on her desk. "Mom, I came back to give you this." My mother squinted, her hand trembling as she opened it. When she saw the large, bold letters of letter of resignation, her face turned from red to a deathly pale. She slammed her hand on the desk, spilling hot tea everywhere. "What is this nonsense? Are you abandoning the company when it's in crisis? You're the eldest son, the pillar of this family. How could you act so despicably?" I remained calm, looking her straight in the eye. "Mom, you announced in front of our entire family that you were giving full control to Kevin. I am now just a stranger in this company. Kevin needs space to prove himself, and I need time to take care of my own small family." "Your small family? All you care about is your wife and daughter. What about your old mother? What about our ancestors' legacy? You're just throwing it all away." My mother screamed, her voice cracking with anger. "I gave you a savings account. What more do you want? Are you using this letter to blackmail me? To force me to take back my decision?" I laughed bitterly. So, in her eyes, every action I took was a calculated move for personal gain. "You misunderstand me, Mom. I don't need more money, and I don't want the CEO's chair anymore. I dedicated 15 years of my life to building Springfield Heritage Woods from a small workshop into a major company. I feel I have paid my dues to this family. From now on, I want to live my own life." Just then, Kevin rushed in from the next room, his face contorted with rage. "Tom, you've gone too far. You knew the clients would only listen to you, so you set me up to fail. And now, you choose this moment to quit? Are you trying to destroy me, to destroy this family? Is that what will make you happy?" I looked at the younger brother I had once protected so fiercely. "Kevin, if you're as good as you claim to be, you'll find new clients." The reputation of Springfield Heritage Woods was built over generations, not just by me. "Be confident and do your job." You ungrateful son," my mother shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at my face. "You think you're so special with your little talent. Go, get out, and once you leave, don't you ever show your face in this house again. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a son like you." Her words were the final knife, severing the last, fragile thread of our relationship. I bowed my head to her one last time and silently turned and walked out of the room. As I walked down the hall, I saw the old craftsman looking at me with sad eyes. I gave them a slight nod, my heart feeling as light as if I had just shed a heavy suit of armor. Stepping out of the company gates, I didn't look back. I knew that behind me lay the ruins of old-fashioned values and greed. Ahead of me was the road back to my wife and daughter, back to the fragrant air of the Asheville Highlands. You can call me ungrateful, Mom, but heaven is watching. How one lives their life will determine their future. After I left, Kevin was like an uncaged bird. He no longer had to endure my stern gaze or listen to my advice about woodworking techniques, which he considered outdated. To Kevin, business was simple. It was all about connections, money, and appearances. He immediately renovated the CEO's office. My simple, solid mahogany desk was thrown into storage and replaced with a flashy, imported desk with gold inlays, a style he'd seen online. He bought an expensive sound system and displayed bottles of top-shelf liquor worth thousands of dollars to impress clients. "See, honey, this is how an office should look. This is how you get respect," Jessica, his wife, said, touching up her makeup. "That old Tom was so cheap. A CEO who smelled like sawdust all the time. Now that you're the boss, you have to live like a tycoon." Kevin grinned triumphantly, admiring his new diamond ring. You're right. Mom was brilliant to put me in charge. I'll show this whole town that without Tom, Springfield Heritage Woods will be even more successful. I'm going to invest in real estate, in the stock market. Who has time to mess with rotten logs all day? Kevin's arrogance peaked when he threw a party for his buddy's ride in the office. Drunk and boisterous, he beat his chest and boasted, "Don't you worry, guys. In my hands, Springfield Heritage Woods will be a giant. My brother was just a hard worker. His mind isn't sharp like mine. Mom just gave me $1 million line of credit to play with. The sky's the limit." My mother, watching from the doorway, beamed with pride. She still believed her choice was the right one. She thought Kevin had leadership charisma, the boldness of youth, while I was too cautious and conservative. She had no idea that the $1 million was, in fact, her entire life savings, which Kevin was now squandering on frivolous ventures. Kevin started to shake up the staff. The older, experienced craftsmen who had been with my father and me for decades were gradually pushed out. He claimed they were too old-fashioned and their salaries were too high. In their place, he hired his cronies, sycophants who knew how to flatter him and collect a hefty paycheck but couldn't tell the difference between oak and pine. "Mr. Kevin, a new shipment of cherry wood just arrived. Do you want to inspect the quality?" a young worker asked. Kevin waved him away, his eyes glued to the real estate prices on his phone. "Just put it in the warehouse. Wood is wood. A good coat of varnish makes everything look nice. Don't bother me with these petty details." It was this combination of overconfidence and profound ignorance that planted the first seeds of the company's collapse. Kevin believed that with his mother's vast resources, he could crush any obstacle. He thought he was smarter than everyone else, but in reality, he was just a child holding a sharp sword, destined to hurt himself and everyone around him. Night after night, Kevin and Jessica would dream of their lavish future, a mansion in the city, sending Leo to a private overseas school. They lived in the illusory glow of the brand I had painstakingly built, unaware that the light was dimming with every step I took away from the company. The storm didn't hit all at once. It began with a few cold gusts from the clients. Just 1 week after Kevin took full control, the first real trouble arrived. On a Monday morning, a group of clients from out of state showed up at Springfield Heritage Woods, their faces not with smiles, but with fury. The leader was Mr. Bishop, a longtime customer who had always held me in high regard. "Kevin, how do you explain this shipment of walnut?" Mr. Bishop slammed his hand on Kevin's glossy new desk. The contract specified grade A lumber, treated with Tom's proprietary eco-friendly sealant. I installed it in a project 3 days ago, and it's already showing signs of cracking and discoloration. I had it tested, and they said it's cheap, chemically treated composite board. Kevin stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Mr. Bishop, there must be some mistake in shipping. Let me have my team look into it." "A mistake? I worked with Tom for 10 years and never received a single flawed board. The moment he leaves, you people try to pull a scam?" Mr. Bishop roared, his voice carrying all the way to the workshop. "I demand a full refund of my deposit and cancellation of the contract. If not, I'm taking this to the Better Business Bureau and the Industry Council." Kevin panicked and called his lackeys in the workshop, but they just stared blankly. The skilled craftsmen who knew how to properly treat wood had all been let go. At the same time, other major partners began acting strangely. The phone calls Kevin used to boast about now became a source of dread. Some canceled contracts, citing changes in their business plans. Others demanded to meet with engineer Tom Miller in person to verify the technical specs before they would release funds. The tipping point came on Wednesday afternoon when representatives from a major bank arrived. They weren't there to congratulate the new CEO. They were there to announce an early recall of the company's loans, citing abrupt changes in key personnel and a significant decline in market reputation. My mother heard the news and rushed to the office. Seeing the chaotic scene, angry clients, panicked employees, she nearly fainted. "Kevin, what is happening? Why is everyone pulling out?" she asked, grabbing her son's arm, her voice trembling. Kevin had lost all his initial bravado. He screamed like a child, caught in the act. "It's Tom. It has to be him. He's behind this, telling the clients to turn on me. He wants to see me fail." My mother looked at Kevin, then at the lavish but empty office. For the first time, she felt true fear. She realized that the Springfield Heritage Woods brand she was so proud of was rotting from the inside. The clients didn't care about a golden-laid desk or expensive liquor. They cared about the integrity and expertise of a true craftsman. "Use the money I gave you to fix this," Refund Mr. Bishop. Bribe the bankers to extend the loan, she whispered desperately. She had no idea that the $1 million had already been sunk into a speculative land deal recommended by Kevin's drinking buddies. The cash in the company safe was down to a few $1,000s, not even enough to cover this month's payroll. The storm had only just begun to form on the horizon. Kevin and my mother were trying to patch the leaks, unaware that the foundation of the company trust had completely washed away with my bus ride to Asheville. From my mountain retreat, I remained silent, not out of spite, but because I knew this was the lesson they had to learn for themselves about the value of people and the importance of honesty in business. While I was enjoying quiet mornings in Asheville, breathing in the scent of pine and watching Sarah tend her budding rose garden, the thunderclouds of debt were gathering over Springfield Heritage Woods back home. News from my hometown reached me through brief, occasional calls from a few of the old craftsmen. They described the atmosphere at the company as suffocating. The $1 million my mother had given Kevin had vanished into thin air, sunk into some phantom golden land development project. In reality, Kevin had been swindled by his so-called friends. With no working capital and cash flow choked by clients refusing to accept faulty products, Springfield Heritage Woods was drowning in debt. One afternoon, Mr. Peterson, the old workshop foreman who had worked with my father from the very beginning, called me, his voice shaking. "Mr. Tom, the company's about to go under. The creditors were here today, swarming the gates. They're threatening to seize the lumber yard if the bank loan isn't paid by next week. Mr. Kevin is hiding in his office, and Mrs. Miller keeps fainting. We workers haven't been paid in 3 months. Everyone's losing hope and about to quit." I listened in silence, my heart aching. Despite my decision to leave, hearing that the legacy my father and I had built was crumbling was painful. But I knew that if I intervened now, I would only be placing the yoke of their injustice back on my own neck. Back at the office, Kevin was tearing his hair out, staring at a pile of overdue notices from 3 different banks. The compounding interest figures danced before his eyes, making him dizzy. "Mom, what am I going to do?" he cried to my mother after she had been revived from another fainting spell. "I didn't think that property deal would stall like this. There's no cash left, and clients are returning all the wood. I think I have to run away." My mother's face was ashen, her lips trembling. "If you run, what will I do with this house, this family? Our entire legacy, our family's honor. Is it all going to be lost at your hands, Kevin?" She looked at the youngest son she had always cherished. Now, he looked pathetic and cowardly. She suddenly thought of me. In the past, whenever the company faced hardship, I would quietly sell my personal motorcycle or stay up all night in the workshop, planing boards by hand to save an order. I never let her worry. But Kevin, at the first sign of trouble, wanted to flee. "Kevin, calm down. I still have a few plots of land in the countryside. Let me see if I can sell them," she whispered, trying to cling to one last shred of hope for her favorite son. But she didn't know that the rural property market was frozen. She could list them for months, and no one would even look. Meanwhile, the raw material suppliers cut them off. The fleet of Springfield Heritage Woods trucks, once constantly bustling, now sat idle, their tires slowly deflating. The final blow came when the electric company sent a notice to cut off power due to unpaid bills. The sound of saws and planers, the very soul of the workshop, fell silent. That silence was more terrifying than any argument. It signaled an irreversible collapse. Kevin was no longer thinking about getting rich. He was terrified of being sued, of going to jail. The CEO title he had once worn with such pride now felt like a heavy chain around his neck. Every evening, as I sat on my porch in Asheville, looking out at the distant horizon, my heart was heavy. Sarah would bring me a hot cup of ginger tea. She never asked, but I knew she understood everything I was thinking. "Don't blame yourself, Tom," she said softly. "For a tree to grow strong, it must put down its own roots. If it's constantly watered with someone else's sweat, it's bound to wither when that person is gone. This is the price of growing up, and Kevin has to pay it." I sighed and took a sip of the bitter tea. The storm of debt back home was sure to sweep away much more. And I knew that when people are cornered, they often do things they would never dare to consider in normal times. When money was plentiful, Jessica, Kevin's wife, was the golden daughter-in-law in Helen's eyes. She was sweet-tongued, always cooing Mom this and Mom that. And having produced the grandson, Leo, she was especially doted upon. But as the old saying goes, you only know your true friends in times of trouble. When Springfield Heritage Woods began to sink in debt, Jessica's true nature was revealed, and it was shockingly cold and ruthless. The sound of Jessica's flattery was replaced by the sound of shouting and smashing plates from her in Kevin's room. "You're useless. I told you not to listen to those friends of yours. But you never listen," she shrieked, her voice shrill. "And look what happened. My money, my gold. You gambled it all away on that ghost project. I will not let my son suffer because of your stupidity." Helen, standing outside the door, felt a sharp pain in her chest. She gently knocked, intending to intervene, but Jessica stormed out, her face a mask of fury. She looked at Helen with cold indifference. "You need to sort out your son. What kind of CEO lets creditors show up at the door threatening to repossess the house? And let me make one thing clear. The gold and money you gave me for our wedding is my personal property. Don't even think about asking me to use it to pay off the company's debts." Helen was speechless. "Jessica, how can you say that? You enjoyed the wealth, and now that the family is in trouble, you should stand by your husband. Leo is part of this family, too." Jessica let out a scornful laugh. "This family? When Tom was here making money, you called him a workhorse. Now that Kevin has ruined everything, you expect us to carry the burden? I'm not that foolish, Helen. I'm only looking out for my son. If this house gets seized, I'm taking Leo and going straight back to my parents' house." Helen stumbled, grabbing the banister for support. She couldn't believe the daughter-in-law she had been so proud of, the one she used to taunt me with, could be so heartless. She remembered Sarah, my quiet, unassuming wife. In the past, whenever the company was short on cash, Sarah would silently take off her wedding earrings and give them to her without a word of complaint. Sarah had cared for her when she was sick, despite all the scolding and neglect. The nightmare didn't end there. Jessica began openly siphoning off what little was left. She secretly moved expensive decorations and antique tea sets to her mother's house. Once, finding Helen lying weakly in bed, Jessica even rummaged through her drawers, searching for any hidden savings bonds or jewelry. What are you doing in my room?" Helen whispered, catching her in the act. "Just looking for some grocery money, Mom. Kevin hasn't given me a dime," Jessica replied curtly, snatching a few bills from the nightstand and walking out without a second glance. Jessica's betrayal was a cold slap in the face to Helen's old-fashioned, son-praising ideology. She realized that the precious grandson she had worshipped was just a pawn used to manipulate her trust. When the money ran out, the family bonds she had cultivated with favoritism shattered like soap bubbles. That night, Helen sat alone in the family study, looking at her late husband's portrait. She cried the belated tears of a mother who had made a terrible mistake. She realized she had driven away the people who truly loved her and welcomed a viper into her home. But her pride still wouldn't allow her to pick up the phone and call me. Instead, a dark idea, planted by Kevin, began to take root in her mind. Desperation had sharpened Kevin's thinking. He knew that only I could negotiate with the banks, that only I could win back the Japanese clients. But he also knew that after how they had treated me, a simple invitation wouldn't be enough to bring me back. "Mom, I have an idea," Kevin whispered, his voice full of cunning. "Tom is a dutiful son, and he loves his daughter more than anything. If you pretend to have a major health crisis, and we can get Lily back here, he'll have to bring money to save us." At first, Helen hesitated. "Isn't that too cruel, Kevin? Lily is just a child." "Cruel? We're family. He's living it up out there while we're starving here. That's what's cruel. I just need to borrow Lily for a few days. As soon as Tom comes back and signs the loan guarantee papers, I'll let her go," Kevin persuaded. His eyes glinted with the recklessness of a cornered man. And so, an elaborate drama was staged. That morning, Sarah received a call from home. It was Kevin, sobbing hysterically. "Sarah, Mom had a stroke. She keeps calling for Tom and Lily. The doctors say she might not make it. Please, bring Lily back to see her one last time." Sarah's heart dropped. No matter how poorly Helen had treated her, she couldn't ignore her mother-in-law on her deathbed. While I was out making a delivery to a local client, Sarah quickly packed a bag, took Lily, and caught a bus back east. She only had time to send me a text. "Tom, Mom is gravely ill. Not expected to live. Taking Lily home. Please arrange things and follow when you can." When I read the message, my heart clenched. A terrible premonition shot through me. I knew my mother's health. She was frail, but not so fragile as to collapse so suddenly. I tried calling Sarah back, but her phone went straight to voicemail, likely due to poor signal in the mountains or a dead battery. Meanwhile, As soon as Sarah and Lily got off the bus, Kevin was there waiting, his face a mask of grief. He rushed them into his old car and drove straight home. But when they arrived, Sarah was horrified to find Helen not in a hospital bed, but sitting up in her own bed. Her face was pale from deliberately not eating to feign illness, but her eyes were sharp with calculation. "Mom, how are you feeling?" Sarah rushed to her side. Helen didn't answer directly. She took Lily's hand, her voice raspy. "Lily, you're back. Stay here with Grandma for a few days, okay?" Instantly, Kevin stepped forward and locked the living room door. His true face was revealed. "Sarah, don't blame us. The company is tens of millions in debt. If Tom doesn't come back here with the patent documents from Grandpa and sign over the loan guarantees to me, you and your daughter aren't leaving this house." Sarah was aghast, clutching Lily tightly. "Kevin, what are you talking about? How could you use your own mother as a prop and hold a child hostage? If Tom finds out, you'll be sorry." "We'll see what he can do," Kevin sneered. "Jessica, take Lily upstairs and watch her closely. Sarah, you call Tom right now. Tell him to bring all the technical files and every penny he has to trade for his daughter. If he doesn't, I can't guarantee what the creditors who are right outside will do to her." Lily started screaming in terror. "Mommy, I'm scared. I want to go home to Daddy." Jessica moved in and wrenched Lily from Sarah's arms, dragging the struggling child away. Helen sat there, witnessing the chaos, hearing her granddaughter's desperate cries. But she just turned her face away in silence. Financial desperation had extinguished the last embers of humanity within her. Sarah collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She had fallen into a cruel trap set by her own family. The house she once considered a home was now a dark prison. But they had made a grave miscalculation. They didn't know that the Tom of today was no longer the son who only knew how to endure and yield. When your family becomes the source of your child's pain, you become a beast to protect what is most precious to you. Back in Asheville, I was already on the earliest bus heading east. In my bag wasn't just money, but cold, hard evidence of Kevin's long-standing deceit. In this confrontation, I would not retreat. The overnight bus roared down the highway, the engine a reflection of the storm raging inside me. Through the window, the dark pine forests of the Appalachians gave way to the dim lights of small towns. My phone remained silent. No word from Sarah. I remembered Lily's wide, innocent eyes asking, "Daddy, why doesn't Grandma love me as much as Leo?" I could only stroke her hair and say Grandma was busy. I had used my own patience to cover for my mother's injustice, hoping one day she would change. Now I realized my excessive tolerance had enabled them, and today, they were using my wife and child as leverage for their greed. "Tom, what's the point of being a good son if you can't even protect your own family?" I cursed myself. My hands clenched so tight, my knuckles turned white. Throughout the ride, I reviewed the documents my grandfather had left me. In addition to his trade secrets, there was a small ledger detailing suspicious expenses he had secretly had someone track for Kevin years ago. My grandfather was a shrewd man. He had seen the seeds of corruption in Kevin when he was just a teenager, spoiled by my mother's indulgence. I also had new evidence provided by my old craftsman proof that Kevin had been embezzling company funds to pay off gambling debts, even when I was still running the business. In the flickering darkness of the bus, I imagined my father's face. He was a man of integrity, who lived his life by a code of honor. I knew if he were alive, he would never stand for this betrayal. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to be calm. I wasn't going back for revenge. I was going back to reclaim justice and peace for my family. "Please, God, protect Sarah and Lily through this night," I prayed, as the sign for my hometown appeared in the headlights. This was no longer the homecoming of a dutiful son. This was the return of a man reclaiming his life. There would be no more yielding, no more polite applause. The Tom who had weathered 15 years of storms had finally awakened. At 4 a.m., I stood before the gates of the old house. The imposing iron gates I was once so proud of now looked cold and desolate. It was so quiet I could hear crickets chirping in the stone walkway. I didn't ring the bell. I used an old spare key I'd never had the heart to throw away and let myself in. The moment I stepped into the living room, the stench of stale cigarettes and cheap liquor hit me. The lights were still on. Kevin was passed out on his new desk, surrounded by empty bottles. He jolted awake at my presence, his bloodshot eyes widening first in shock, then in triumph. Well, big brother. You got here fast. I knew it. Only your precious Lily could drag you back to this dump." I ignored him, my gaze fixed on the second floor, from where I could hear Lily's faint whimpers. "Where is Sarah? Where's my daughter? Let them go. Now." My voice was low, but it carried a weight that made Kevin flinch. "Don't you threaten me." He staggered to his feet. "Look around. The creditors are circling this house like vultures. You have the money. You have Grandpa's secrets. You have to hand them over to save me, to save Mom. If you don't, your wife and daughter aren't walking out of here." Just then, my mother emerged from her room. She looked years older, her face gaunt from her feigned illness, now etched with genuine fear. She couldn't meet my eyes. "Tom," she mumbled, we had no other choice. He's in so much debt they were threatening to kill us." I looked at my mother, my heart twisting. "Mom, to save Kevin, you were willing to deceive your daughter-in-law and hold your own granddaughter hostage? Have you forgotten what family means? Lily is 6 years old. What did she ever do to deserve this?" My mother was silent, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. But Kevin pressed on. "Enough talk. Did you bring the money or not? Are you going to sign the loan guarantees?" I strode forward and slapped him across the face, a slap I should have delivered 10 years ago when I first saw his corruption. He stumbled into a pile of bottles, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "You listen to me, Kevin. I didn't come back to give you money to squander. I came back to take my wife and daughter home. You made this mess. You will face the consequences." At that moment, Jessica ran down from upstairs, brandishing a porcelain vase. "You ungrateful monster. Are you trying to kill your own brother? You take one more step, and I'll push Lily down the stairs." I stopped, my eyes like ice. "Jessica, don't think I don't know you've been secretly moving assets to your parents' house. You and Kevin are in this together, aren't you? One of you plays the victim to extort money, while the other prepares to run." Jessica froze, her face turning white. My ferocity had plunged the room into a suffocating silence. I was no longer the gentle, yielding son they could bully. I was a father fighting for his child. "Tom, what are you talking about? Kevin has his own money?" my mother asked, her voice trembling with suspicion. I didn't answer her with words. I pulled a folder from my jacket and threw it on the table. "See for yourself, Mom. This is a statement from Kevin's personal bank account that I had someone pull. While you were scraping together your life savings to give to him, he was transferring over $200,000 into a secret account in his mother-in-law's name." "You're lying. You bastard. You're trying to tear this family apart," Kevin screamed, lunging for the papers. I pushed him away. "And that's not all, Mom. The land deals he claimed he lost money on, he actually used them as collateral to pay off a gambling syndicate 3 years ago. Of all the debt Springfield Heritage Woods has right now, 60% of it comes from fraudulent invoices he signed to pocket the cash." My mother picked up the documents, her cloudy eyes struggling to read the numbers. With every page she turned, her heart seemed to squeeze tighter. The figures, the dates, the signatures, they all belonged to the son she had worshipped as the family's salvation. "Kevin, tell me what this is," she shrieked, her voice a tortured cry. Kevin collapsed to his knees, his aggression gone. He started to cry, the same manipulative crying he had always used to beg for her forgiveness. "Mom, they tricked me. I was just trying to make more money for Leo." Seeing the tide turn, Jessica tried to sneak back upstairs, but I blocked her path. "Where do you think you're going, Jessica? Where is the key to the room where you're holding my wife and daughter? Give it to me." The ugly truth was laid bare as the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows. The fall of Springfield Heritage Woods wasn't because clients left or because I resigned. It was because of the cancer that my mother had spent a lifetime nurturing with her blind favoritism. I walked over to my mother, my voice sad but firm. "Do you see now, Mom? The person you trusted the most is the one who stabbed you in the back. And the son you always pushed away is the one standing here to expose this rotten mess for you." My mother swayed, the pearl necklace in her hand snapping. The beads scattered across the floor like dry, soundless tears. She slumped into a chair, her face in her hands. The truth was too brutal for a mother who had lived her entire life for a flawed ideal. At that point, I no longer cared about Kevin or my mother. I ran upstairs and broke down the door of the dark room where Sarah and Lily were being held. The moment she saw me, Lily burst into tears and ran into my arms. "Daddy, I knew you'd come save us." Sarah was gaunt and pale after just one night. She couldn't speak, just held on to me, her body shaking uncontrollably. I picked up my daughter, took my wife's hand, and walked downstairs. As we passed through the living room, Kevin was still kneeling. My mother was like a stone statue, devoid of spirit. "Mom," I said, pausing at the door, "I'm taking my wife and daughter back to Asheville right now. As for the company's debts, I'll have my lawyer handle it legally. Kevin will have to answer for what he's done. And you take care of yourself." I walked out the door without looking back. The sun was rising, casting long golden rays on the road ahead. The nightmare was finally over, but I knew the wounds in my mother's heart and the pain of this family would linger for a long time. But from this day forward, my family would finally have peace. Just as I was leading Sarah and Lily into the yard, a black luxury sedan pulled up to the curb. Mr. Davies, an elderly lawyer and my grandfather's closest friend, stepped out. He carried a worn but distinguished leather briefcase. His sudden appearance brought the tense atmosphere to a standstill. "Mr. Davies? Why are you here at this hour?" Helen whispered, a sense of foreboding in her voice. Mr. Davies didn't answer her directly. He nodded at me, then glanced at Kevin, who was still kneeling on the floor. "I'm here to fulfill a final request from an old friend. He instructed me that if the day ever came when Tom had to use his spare key to enter this house, it would mean the family was in crisis. On that day, I was to reveal the second will." "A second will?" Kevin shrieked, his eyes wild with panic. "My mother is the sole heir." "You're lying. You're in on it with him to steal our family's property." Mr. Davies calmly opened his briefcase, produced a notarized document, and placed it on the table. "Please remain calm, Kevin. The will Mrs. Miller holds only grants her temporary administrative rights. This is the final will, which determines ultimate ownership." He began to read in a clear, resonant voice. "I, Joseph Miller, being of sound mind, owner of the property at 12 Elm Street and 70% of the shares in Springfield Heritage Woods, do hereby decree the following. All aforementioned assets are entrusted to my daughter, Helen Miller, for her use and management during her lifetime. However, in the event of severe family disunity, mistreatment of grandchildren, or if the designated manager, Kevin Miller, engages in acts of destroying the family assets through gambling or fraud, all ownership rights shall immediately and irrevocably transfer to my eldest grandson, Thomas Miller." The room was deathly silent. Mr. Davies looked directly at Helen. "Ma'am, the evidence of Kevin's gambling and financial fraud that Tom has just presented is sufficient to trigger this clause. By law, this house and what remains of Springfield Heritage Woods now belong to Tom. You only have residency rights here, if he allows it." Helen looked as if her soul had left her body. She had spent half her life clinging to power, playing favorites, imposing her will, thinking she was the queen of this small kingdom. She never imagined that her own father, my grandfather, had seen it all coming. He had set a time bomb to protect the grandson he loved most. Kevin lunged for the will, but I caught his shoulder and pushed him back down. "Don't waste your energy, Kevin. I brought Mr. Davies here to do this by the book. In this house, you no longer have any say." Jessica, seeing the ship was well and truly sinking, discreetly pulled out her phone to text someone. I knew she was planning her final escape. My mother stared at the will, then at me, then at Kevin. She finally understood that her destitution wasn't because someone had stolen from her, but because she had willingly handed everything to a prodigal son. Justice, it turned out, was not blind. Just 2 hours after the will was read, the front door opened again. This time, it was uniformed police officers. The business malpractices, the fraudulent contracts Kevin had signed, and complaints from swindled partners had led to an arrest warrant. Kevin couldn't stand straight as they read him his rights. He looked at his mother, stammering, "Mom, save me. I don't want to go to jail. Tom, please, I'm begging you, just help me this one time." Helen scrambled over and grabbed an officer's leg, sobbing. "Please, sir, my son was foolish. Let me pay his debts. Don't take him." I stood there, my heart cold. My compassion had run out the moment they locked Lily in that room. I went to my mother and helped her up. "Mom, Kevin has to be held accountable for his actions. This is no longer about money. It's about the law." At that moment, a tragically comical scene unfolded. Jessica, dragging 2 large suitcases, tried to sneak out the back door, but was blocked by the creditors who were still lingering. "Aha! Trying to make a run for it, are we?" A burly man sneered, grabbing her suitcase. In the struggle, the suitcase burst open, spilling jewelry, stacks of cash, and expensive cosmetics all over the driveway. Kevin stared at his wife in disbelief. Jessica? You were going to leave me? Where did you get all that money? Jessica dropped all pretense of the doting wife. Stay with you and rot in jail? I have a son to think about. You're a useless, destructive failure. Helen looked at the daughter-in-law she had once cherished, then at the scattered money and gold things she had given her in exchange for affection and a grandson. She let out a wild, painful laugh. The collapse of Kevin wasn't just the failure of a company. It was the utter demolition of the false values this family had worshipped. Kevin was taken away to the sound of Helen's wails. The once stately mansion was now just a pile of wreckage, broken finances, broken trust, and broken hearts. The creditors, seeing the police involved, gradually dispersed, leaving behind a chilling silence. I looked around the house, a place filled with so many memories. Now, it was just an empty shell. I knew it was legally mine, but I didn't want to stay here another minute. This place was tainted by betrayal and scheming. Despite everything, seeing my mother sitting shell-shocked in the empty living room, her hair now almost completely white, I couldn't bring myself to abandon her. They say a mother's love is unconditional, and as a son, no matter how wrong she was, I couldn't leave her homeless in her old age. I turned to Mr. Davies. Sir, could you please help me with the legalities of selling this mansion? After paying off the personal debts Kevin owed to the poor craftsmen and the small creditors he cheated, I want to use the remaining money to buy a small, quiet house in the countryside for my mother. Helen looked up at me, her cloudy eyes filled with remorse and astonishment. Tom, you're not taking the house? You're not kicking me out? I sat down next to her. For the first time in years, I took her wrinkled hand in mine. Mom, I don't need this house to prove my worth. I have my own 2 hands and a mind to build a home for my family. This house is legally mine, but I will use it to pay for our family's mistakes. I used some of my personal savings from Asheville to settle the most urgent debts Kevin had left her with. I also had someone find a charming little cottage in her hometown, a place with a fruit garden and a peaceful atmosphere where she could live out her remaining years. Go back to the countryside, Mom. It will be good for you. You'll have relatives nearby and fresh air. I will send you money every month, so you won't have to worry about anything. As for Kevin, let the law teach him his lesson. When he gets out and has truly reformed, that house will have a place for him to start over. Helen burst into tears. This time, it wasn't a shriek of loss, but the choked sobs of someone who had finally awakened. She hugged me, her shoulders shaking. I was wrong, Tom. I was so blind. I drove away my most loyal son and invited a disaster into my home. Please, forgive me. I said nothing, just patted her back. Forgiveness is a long journey, and perhaps time would heal these wounds. That afternoon, I took Sarah and Lily to the bus station to return to Asheville. Before we left, I led Lily over to say goodbye to her grandmother. Helen, trembling, took a small silver bracelet from her pocket, a gift she should have given her long ago, and put it on Lily's wrist. Grandma is so sorry, Lily. Come visit me sometime, okay? Lily nodded obediently. Okay, Grandma. You take care. As the bus pulled away, I saw Helen's small figure in the rearview mirror, standing in front of the mansion that was awaiting its new owners. A weight lifted from my soul. I had fulfilled my duties of love and family. I had not allowed hatred to overcome the goodness my grandfather had taught me. We were heading back to Asheville, back to the seasons of blooming flowers. Behind us was a painful past, closed with a final act of grace. Ahead of us was a clear blue sky and the peaceful life we had always dreamed of. The feeling of having done the right thing, of a circle completed, made me smile, a true smile, from the bottom of my heart. The bus engine rumbled to life and slowly pulled away, leaving the dusty, memory-laden town behind. Through the window, I watched the old house recede until it was just a dot, finally disappearing behind a row of old trees. A soft sigh escaped my lips, not of sadness, but of profound relief. Sarah sat beside me, her hand intertwined with Lily's. Our daughter, exhausted from the ordeal, had fallen asleep, her eyelashes still fluttering. I knew the emotional scars would take time to heal, but I believed the fresh mountain air and our boundless love would be the best medicine. What are you thinking about? Sarah asked, her voice a gentle breeze. About everything that's happened, I replied, my gaze fixed on the horizon. There were times I thought I couldn't endure the betrayal from my own family. But now, looking ahead, all I feel is peace. As the bus climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew cooler and crisper. The scent of pines seeped into the cabin. I thought of my mother, standing alone at the gate that morning. Her eyes, following us, held no authority, only pleading and regret. I had forgiven her, not because she was right, but because I needed to free my own soul from the chains of resentment. My grandfather used to say that grievances should be untied, not held tight. I had chosen to untie mine with one final act of kindness. He also used to say that every life is like a piece of wood. Some are straight-grained, some are twisted, some are full of knots. A master craftsman isn't someone who only works with perfect wood, but one who knows how to work with the knots, turning flaws into unique features. My life was like that. I would use the pain of the past to build a stronger future. Daddy, are we at the cloud house yet? Lily woke up, her innocent voice breaking the silence. Almost, sweetie. Soon, when the sun comes up, you'll see our house floating in a sea of white clouds, I said, stroking her hair. My heart filled with a simple, pure happiness. We arrived in the mountains, as the morning mist still blanketed the pine-covered hills. The cool air was invigorating. We walked down the small dirt path toward our garden. From a distance, our little log cabin looked rustic and serene amidst the budding rose bushes. I opened the wooden gate and led my family inside. The house smelled of fresh wood and wild herbs. I took a deep breath, savoring the taste of freedom. From this moment on, no one could ever hurt my family again. We were truly home, a home built with honest hands and unconditional love. 2 years passed in a blur. Our life in Asheville was now stable and as vibrant as the mountain wildflowers. Sarah's flower farm had become famous in the region. She cultivated rare, fragrant heirloom roses, and tourists flocked to see them. Watching her, radiant among her blossoms, made every past hardship feel worthwhile. My workshop, Tom's Timbers, also became a respected name among lovers of fine woodwork. Using my grandfather's natural treatment techniques, my creations were durable, beautiful, and free of harmful chemicals. I started teaching the craft to local underprivileged youths, telling them that the most important tool wasn't skill, but heart. You have to understand the wood as you would a person. Lily was now in 2nd grade, a bright, cheerful girl who loved to paint. She would sit beside me in the workshop, sketching the flowers from her mother's garden or the strange shapes of wood scraps. Her laughter was the light of our home. I continued to send money to my mother and had a relative check in on her. I heard she lived a simple, quiet life now, spending her days gardening and volunteering at the local church. The small cottage I bought for her was warm and cozy, a world away from the cold mansion. Sometimes, standing on a hill overlooking the misty valley, I would think back on the storm. I no longer felt anger toward Kevin. I heard he was still paying for his mistakes behind bars. I only hoped that when he was released, he would understand that money is fleeting, but family is forever. This season, the roses in our garden bloomed more brilliantly than ever. Their delicate petals, resilient against the cold wind, were much like our lives. We had weathered the harshest winter to now stand in the warm sunlight of spring. The reward for a good and honest life, perhaps, is not great fortune, but peace in the soul and the thriving of those you love. In a quiet village by a gentle river, an old, thin woman often sat silently under a grapefruit tree. It was Helen. Away from the city and her ambitions, she was just an ordinary old woman. The quiet life gave her too much time to confront herself. She remembered Kevin, the son she had showered with all her love, only to be deceived and left in ruins. The pain was not the loss of money, but the realization that her precious jewel was a coward. Then she would think of me. She remembered how I had quietly paid her debts, sat by her sickbed, and endured her public humiliation. Yet, when everyone else had abandoned her, it was the son she had called ungrateful who provided her a place to live out her days. I was a terrible mother, she would whisper, tears tracing the deep lines on her face. She started writing me letters, not of apology, but of understanding. She wrote, "Tom, I finally understand. Your grandfather loved you because he knew you had a good heart. I'm sorry. Let me be a real mother, a real grandmother for the rest of my life." The lessons learned at 70 are often the most painful. That Christmas, we decided to visit her. The Blue Ridge Mountains were dusted with a light snow. Lily, in a festive red coat, carried a bouquet of winter roses from Sarah's garden. When Helen saw us, she rushed out, hugging Lily with tears in her eyes. "My Lily, you've grown so much. Forgive your old grandma." Lily hugged her back. "I'm not mad, Grandma. Look at the pretty flowers Mommy grew for you." Our holiday dinner was simple, nothing like the lavish parties of the past, but it was filled with genuine laughter. Helen sat in the middle, serving everyone, her eyes sparkling with a joy she had long lost. "Tom," she said, "after the holidays, I'm going to start volunteering full-time at the community center. I want to spend my remaining days making up for my mistakes." I held her hand. "Whatever makes you feel at peace, Mom. We will always support you." I told her about my growing business and about my recent visit to see Kevin in prison. He was changing, full of remorse, and working hard to earn an early release to care for her. Hearing this, Helen wept with relief. On New Year's Eve, I stood outside her cottage, watching the quiet river flow by. I realized life is like a large workshop. Some pieces of wood seem worthless, but with patience and love, they can be shaped into something beautiful. Our family was like that. After being shattered, we had mended ourselves with forgiveness. "Look, Tom, the fireworks," Sarah called out, pointing to the distant town. Bright bursts of color lit up the night sky, chasing away the darkness of the past. I wrapped my arms around my wife and daughter, feeling the warmth of family. Our story had closed a turbulent chapter and opened a new, brighter one. A person who lives with kindness will find peace in the end. This is not a fairy tale promise, but a law of nature. When you plant the seeds of sincerity and patience, you will harvest the sweet fruits of tranquility. And whether in the highlands of Asheville or a small village by the river, the flowers of decency will always, always bloom.